Hello, and welcome to our discussion of marketing in the 2010s. Um, a lot of stuff been going on in marketing since the decade of the teens or the tens started, and we're going to talk about two topics in this lecture. The first we're going to talk about is a concept known as value co-creation, and that's a concept that if we go back to our overview, would touch upon things such as obviously value, because value co-creation has the word value in it. Would focus on the four P's of marketing as well as the idea of customer needs and wants. And the second topic that we will discuss in marketing in the 2010s is kind of the elephant in the room, and that's technology. And as I pointed out at the end of the overview lecture, didn't spend a lot of time talking about technology because as a component of the marketing macro environment, because there's just a lot of there's been tremendous change in technology that's had market implications on how marketing is done. So again, I have my handy cheat sheet here and telling me what I need to cover. So if you see me glance down periodically, I'm not trying to avoid you. So the first topic again that we're going to talk about is the concept of value co-creation, and this is a relatively new concept in marketing. And you say, oh God, he's going to talk about his principles of marketing class. I don't even think value co-creation was on the horizon when I took my principles of marketing class. And in fact, the value co-creation concept really didn't come about until the mid 2000s, 2003, 2004. So, relatively speaking, I mean, if you think of marketing being a discipline that's over 100 years old, value co-creation is a pretty new concept. And what it refers to is engaging the customer directly in the production or distribution of value. So again, the value co-creation concept refers to engaging the customer directly in the production or distribution of value. And the question becomes with value co-creation, or one of the questions that arises with value co-creation is, how can we engage the customer? If we're an organization, how can we engage the customer? And in fact, why should we engage the customer? And basically, it's like anything else. You think about maybe the classes that you've learned the most from. Sometimes they're the ones in which you were most engaged. And so the value co-creation idea, the idea of engaging the customer, follows the same idea that customers will be more engaged, customers will be more involved, customers may become more loyal, right? They may not only be more satisfied, which is an important concept. Satisfaction is a prerequisite for customer loyalty, and what studies have shown is that loyal customers not only buy more through time, but they tend to be more profitable through time as well. So there's a practical reason why marketers have come around to this value co-creation concept. So again, the question is, how can we engage the customer? And we'll just talk about a couple of ways that the customer can be engaged. And one is you engage the customer by allowing her or him to make the product to order. And so, if you remember when we talked about Chipotle, one of the reasons that Chipotle, that I indicated that Chipotle adds value is that you basically can go in there and you can make your taco or burrito or whatever. You can make that to order, right? And so that's one way of doing things. There's a number of other examples as well. You can build your own computer or your own laptop, right? Nike has the make your own shoe option. Increasingly, and this is a really, to me, very scary topic that blends both technology and value co-creation, is the concept of 3D printing or additive manufacturing. And that concept is in its relative infancy. maybe in an early growth phase. But boy, I'll tell you, talk about the ability to make something, exactly to what you want. Or what the customer wants. And, one of the things I like to talk about, obviously, it has a, 3D printing or additive manufacturing. They're starting to take a look at it, more in the kind of what its implications are for logistics and supply chain management. But, from a marketing perspective, I mean, if you need to make a toy, like it's Christmas time and you need to make a toy and you haven't bought the toy, but you got a 3D printer, and you could make the toy and make it, let's say, in a color or slightly tweak the shape so that the person getting the toy would have a toy that has a very unique color or a very unique shape. So 3D printing, additive manufacturing is certainly a technology that will help or could help in terms of engaging the customer in making a product to order. And it's something that's really kind of worthy of attention, and it's starting to pick up. The whole concept of 3D printing or 3D printing or additive manufacturing is starting to pick up a lot of steam in the business world. And a second way, and again, there's much more than two ways to engage the customer, but again, we're trying to keep these discussions between 15 and 20 minutes, so we're not going to spend, pardon me, while I take a sip of coffee. We're not going to spend a great deal of time. We don't have enough time to go through all the different ways that customers can be engaged. Is self-service, and you think about the self-service options that exist. An increasing self-serve option, at least in the United States, is the number of companies that now allow you to do self-checkout. You can go to a number of Walmarts. They may have self-checkouts. I know the grocery chain that I go to in Northeast Ohio is Giant Eagle. A number of the Giant Eagle locations have self-checkouts. So, self-service. Second type of self-service is, and me being a logistics guy, absolutely loves this kind of stuff, but the ability to track and trace my online orders. I'm kind of a geek when it comes to that, but sometimes what it allows me to do is, see potential what I would consider inefficiencies in how a product is being routed. And it's just kind of nice to know from my perspective where a product is. And there are many other examples of self-service as well. You think about if you go into a number of fast food restaurants in the United States. You can get your own soda, and you can not only get your own soda, right, but by getting your own soda, it also allows you to make the product of your order. So, you might remember when you were a little kid and you kind of said, well, I don't know. I want some Diet, I want some Coke, and I want some Sprite, and I want an orange, and I want some sort of root beer thing, and you can mix that all together. Try to tell that to the person behind the counter when you say, yeah, I'd like a medium soft drink, but I'd like a little bit of Coke and a little bit of Sprite and a little bit of orange and a little bit of root beer. So one of the key things with the value co-creation concept is it fundamentally changes the way that an organization views a customer. And so one of the ways, for example, is that the customer moves from a passive agent, somebody who's just buying a product, right, to an active agent, right? So if you're engaged in designing your own product, or if you're engaged in self-service, right, you are now no longer passive. You're an active agent. And again, there's that whole engagement thing. And secondly, what's happened with respect to value co-creation is that the organization moves from communicating with a customer to having a dialogue with the customer. So if you think about, for example, if you think about the Chipotle example, right? They'll ask you, do you want this? Do you want this? And you can say, yeah, but don't put a lot on, or can you put extra on, and things like that. So, a whole different focus. And again, what we've got is we've got greater customer engagement, and we also have the idea that the way the organization views the customer changes. So we spent a little bit of time on value co-creation, and the next thing we'll spend a little bit of time on is the idea of technology, and just the pervasiveness of technology, and we'll talk about two things. Again, we could talk about a whole bunch of things, but we'll talk about two things. One is the concept of mobile marketing, or what some people now just refer to as M marketing. I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, it might have been about 10, 12 years ago that I saw M marketing. I'm like, what the hell is M marketing? Pardon my language. So first thing we'll talk about is mobile marketing, and the second thing we'll talk about is the concept of big data. And big data is not necessarily just solely for marketing, but big data and the whole data analytics concept is really a transformational, just like 3D printing, in my opinion, or transformational kinds of technological concepts that really are going to have a tremendous impact on how organizations market themselves going forward. So again, mobile marketing, we'll take a very broad definition of mobile marketing, and we'll refer to, mobile marketing is marketing that's done with or on a mobile device. And one of the reasons that mobile marketing has become so prevalent is because there are a lot more mobile devices. And you say, well, who didn't know that? But if you go back even 20 years, which may seem like a long time, but some of you are, basically 20 years old. You go back 20 years, there really weren't as many mobile devices. Yeah, there were cell phones, but for the most part, cell phones 20 years ago just allowed you to make phone calls and maybe do some texting, and they really weren't smartphones, right? And that's one of the things that's kind of the evolution of the smartphone has really impacted the ability to mobile market. Similarly, the ability to go from a desktop to a laptop to a tablet, right? So there's a whole, and again, if you go back 20 years, yeah, desktops existed, obviously. Laptops existed, but they weren't as common as desktops, and tablets were a dream. And now you look at it, and desktops still exist, but you think desktop, you think of something else that begins with a D, dinosaur, right? Laptops, they still exist. Tablets, much more prevalent. And obviously you look at, you just look at a whole portability thing, right? Who lugs a desktop around? Although I do have a friend, a former student of mine actually, at Ohio, who teaches at The Ohio State University, teaches in the business school at The Ohio State University, and he lives in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and he goes to a coffee shop there, and he sent out an email one time saying, what do you call somebody who walks into a coffee shop with a desktop computer? So I guess some people do carry desktops around, but hey, not as common as either laptops or tablets these days. And one of the things that then you say, okay, great, that's a wonderful story. You're killing time here, Doc. I mean, you only got 20 minutes at most, and 15 if you could really cut things down. But one of the things that marketers, excuse me, have learned is that mobile devices allow for a different kind of marketing. Now that might seem obvious, but one of the things that has emerged is that the redemption rates, for example, the redemption rates for coupons are much greater with mobile devices, specifically smartphones, than they are with other kinds of couponing. I call it technology, right? The old paper things that you would cut out from the newspapers, or even the redemption things, kind of like the coupons in a store kind of thing, where you go and there's a product, and right next to the product there's a coupon device. drawing a blank. But they found that couponing tends to be much more effective with mobile marketing, and mobile marketing. If you look at it from a promotional perspective, marketers can do a lot more because it's so fast, right? And many people spend a lot of time on their mobile devices. I mean, think about how long you spend on your mobile device in a particular day, right? They found that the organizations can spur sales. If they have slow moving things, or if they come up with a creative idea, they can get that idea out really fast and potentially get a lot of action based on the use of mobile devices. And the use of mobile devices have led to things, you think about things like Yelp and TripAdvisor and things of that nature. So, I mean, how many of you I now use? I mean, hell, I'm a technology dinosaur compared to all of you, but I find myself now looking at if I'm going to places, and maybe if I'm traveling to a city and I'm not quite sure where to eat. One thing that can be very helpful is either the reviews on the TripAdvisor or the reviews on Yelp. So mobile marketing, and clearly we can't do justice to mobile marketing in a short lecture. And the second aspect of technology that we said we talk about is big data. And a lot of big data is a relatively new concept. Excuse me. And because of that, there are a number of different definitions. So you might have been exposed to big data in another class. I'm going to give you a definition that I use. It doesn't mean it's the definition, but it is a definition of big data. So big data refers to a collection of real-time or near real-time data for a variety of sources. From a variety of sources, to include sensors, smartphones, RFID tags, or blocks. So again, big data refers to a collection of real-time or near real-time data from a variety of sources, to include sensors, smartphones, RFID tags, or blocks. And it's big because the sheer volume of data. And one of the reasons that big data didn't exist, right, was until more recently, was because you didn't have the technology that allowed you to collect a lot of data, but B, even when you could collect a lot of data, another aspect of big data is the ability and the necessity of analyzing data quickly and making decisions. So, back when I was your age, you could collect a lot of data, but it took forever. First of all, you had to program the data, then you had to submit it to a computer programmer, then they ran it through the computer, then you waited for the results, and see what you got there is a whole lot of time. And then if the data, if you'd done something wrong with your computer program, you were sunk because you had to go back and reanalyze your computer program. And so there's a whole bunch of time. Now we have the capability of collecting the data, collecting a lot of data, and analyzing and looking at and then making decisions based on the data in a relatively short period of time. So So again, big data is the collection of real-time, near real-time data from a variety of sources, to include sensors, smartphones, RFID tags, and blocks. There's a lot of examples of how big data can be applied. One of them that I've used periodically is Lowe's, the home improvement chain. What they are now doing is they have cameras in the store, and they record everybody when they come in the store, and what they're looking at is, when the people come in the store, where do they go? And so what they're doing is they're analyzing in-store traffic patterns to anticipate shopping needs as well as product placement. So I mean, the common sense thing, and one of the classic examples that I use of this is, common sense thing is that, if you have hammers, you probably have nails or something like that are nearby. But that's the kind of thing that Lowe's and other kinds of companies are now doing. And with the big data and with the ability to capture the data and then analyze it relatively quickly, they can get a sense for, what, the people that bought this product are also buying this product. And the problem with the people that are buying the first product is it's located, half a store away from the other product. So it would allow Lowe's to, perhaps rearrange the products so that the products that are being bought together are located in close proximity. Got to stop now if I break my 20 minutes. See you, bye.